All right, here we go. History of reading strategies. This is going to be super fun, so get ready to hang on. So, basically, there are three main strategies that you are going to run into as a education student. So basically, we have phonics, we have whole language, and we have balanced literacy. So phonics, as we know, is the relationship of sounds and letters, and children need to the essence is that children need to learn by sounding out the words. This goes all the way back to the 1800s, and so this is the original McGuffey orator, where it's just at, rat, cat, k, at, and you just sound it out and read the book. Okay, so then in about the 1930s, the whole word approach or the whole language approach became popular through the Dick and Jane series. So Dick and Jane there was lots of visual memory process. So basically what it was putting forward was that by repetition of the text, the students would the language would just they would just be immersed in it, and they would just understand it. Okay, so that it would become the language would be visually represented in their mind, and then they would just start to see these words. So it's very repetitive. Look, said Dick, see it go up. Jane said, oh look, see it go up, said Sally, yes, up. So again, it's all of this, getting the kids to actually read books and get that idea of their memory. So what they wanted to do, whole language, was they wanted kids to actually enjoy reading when they thought in the phonics that going at, cat, rat, or at was not super fun. Well, the phonics people and the whole language people have been battling it out since the 1930s. And so yeah, there they are. They're battling it out. And so ultimately what happened was in like the 1960s, late 1960s, the whole concept of balanced literacy was put forth. And it was a bit of a balance between phonics and whole language. So it was sort of this trying to see teaching reading strategies as somewhere in the middle. So this was Ken Goodman in 1967. He presented a paper at the American Educational Research Association conference. As an aside, I've also spoken at that conference, so Ken and I were good buds. JK. Ken is like much older than me. So basically at the conference, Goodman rejected the idea that reading is a precise process that involves a detailed perception of letters or words or phonics. Instead, he argued that as people read, they make predictions about the words on the page using three cues. And this is important. So here's this little visual here. So graphic cues, syntactic cues, and semantic cues. So what do the letters tell you about the word? What kind of word might it be? And what word would make sense here? So he said that the way that we actually should be teaching reading is we should be teaching them that the kids actually have to look at the context, and they don't have to look so much at the individual sounds making up the words. So its modus operandi, balanced literacy's modus operandi, was they did teach some phonics, but they wanted to allow lots of time for authentic reading and writing. They wanted to use predictable texts, so text that so this is a bit of that whole language that the kids could actually predict. They wanted to assess students using this meaning structure. Remember this from last year when we did running records, visual analysis and reading on reading records. And they wanted to explain reading as an orchestration of all of these together. Okay, so everything was perfect. It was like, yeah, this seems like a nice compromise between the phonics and the whole language battling going on here to have this balanced literacy, until the cognitive scientists came along. Okay, and now a new battle was upon us. So Keith Stanovich was a cognitive scientist at the University of Michigan in 1975, and he was interested in researching some of Goodman's theories and to see if, it was that actually correct the way that people learned, that the best way for people to learn how to read was through looking at these graphic syntactic and graphic, syntactic, and semantic cues. Well, Keith Stanovich found that Goodman was wrong. And I'm going to read his quote. To our surprise, all of our research results pointed in the opposite direction, Stanovich wrote. It was the poorer readers, not the more skilled readers, who were more reliant on context to facilitate word recognition. So basically, Stanovich found that skilled readers could instantly recognize words without relying on the context at all because they understood the individual sounds and letters. So what's this sounding like? Back kind of to the idea of teaching of systematic phonics. It turns out the ability to read words in isolation quickly and accurately is the hallmark of being a skilled reader. And from the beginning of Stanovich's research, there's been a plethora of research from the cognitive scientists, and they say that having kids actually guess at words or use context clues or use pictures actually is not a good way. They need to have the phonics. They need to understand the individual sounds, the letters, and how those go together. So, super fun for you guys, because now it seems like we've kind of come full circle from the 1800s where we talked about phonics. We went through whole language, we went through balanced literacy, and now we're kind of back at the idea of phonics. So it's super fun actually for you, because you actually have the skills to dive into any program that comes out to you, and you want to put your critical literacy lens on it, because there are going to be people still in 2020 that say balanced reading is absolutely the way to go, or they're going to say systematic phonics is absolutely the way to go, or whole language is absolutely the way to go. But you need to have some critical literacy skills and be able to ascertain if programs are actually the best way to teach kids how to read, because we know how important it is, right? So we can't mess around. We want to find the best way. So basically, this is kind of like a throwback to when we looked at analyzing phonics programs, is how can we actually analyze these programs when they come out to us? So basically, you need to figure out what is your philosophical basis. So do you believe that phonics, whole language, or balanced literacy is the best reading strategy? And this is you in 2 years. So this is what we're going to do and collaborate, is let you have a little bit of a time of what do you believe is the best strategy. Then you have to, what is the philosophical basis of the programming you're analyzing? So that's, again, you need to know what is the basis of this program, because the basis of the program will dictate the program and ultimately will dictate how you teach kids how to read. Okay. Also, you need to be, if you actually buy into the cognitive and neuroscience discoveries, then you need to be weighing every program against what they are putting forth. And what they are putting forth is that we need systematic phonics training, and not using context, not using pictures, not just sort of hoping that you'll memorize enough words to get by, but that you actually know how to decode. Okay, so again, if that's what you buy into, then you have to weigh all of the things that are included in a program against that. And ultimately, you have to know, where are your students at, and what would be the best program or the best fit for those particular students. So if you're teaching grade 1 and they are all reading at a grade 3 level, well, you probably don't have to pound through all of the sounds, all of the phonemes, because they already know that. So again, you have to have a sense of where your kids are at. So those are the 3 you must, when you look at any program that's handed down to you by your principal, by your district, it is your responsibility as a researcher and an amazing literacy teacher to know what this is. Don't just blindly accept it, right? Don't just blindly accept it. You have to go after it a little bit in there. Okay, so once we have had an idea of these programs, now what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of go through the ones that you did readings on and maybe give you a little bit more of an explanation about those. So we saw Richard Allington. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on him. He's basically his philosophy is around struggling readers, and that his idea is that whole language and balanced literacy is the best for those struggling readers, because he sees that those struggling readers need a plethora of tools. So if we only focused on phonics, he really believes that lots of kids would not be learning. Lots of the struggling readers would still be struggling and not be able to learn. When you read his article, if you were wondering about the Reading First program, it's actually one of the only programs that is still left over from the George W. Bush era of No Child Left Behind. And it was actually, its key focus was on all of the things. Actually, it seems like a decent one, which I think is why it's still current. It talked about phonemic awareness, phonics, vocab, fluency, comprehension. And so that's what he is talking about in that particular article that you read of his. Okay, let's look at simple view of reading. This is Louisa Moats, and this is a view, as it says, a simple view of reading. And her idea is that she wrote an article called "Reading is Rocket Science," and it was a bit of a pushback to the whole language movement. She's saying it is not. Words don't just pop off the page and kids know what they are, which is kind of what whole language is. She said reading is rocket science, and it is hard, and it is very abstract. And so we have to go at it as if it's hard and not just hope that kids kind of get it. So she's definitely more on the phonics side. And she is very much into teacher education, that you particularly as new teachers going out there need to understand that there are different ways to teach reading, and that teaching it is not intuitive. Reading is not intuitive, and that it is hard work for you and for the kids, but as you know, it's ultimately the thing that unlocks lots and lots of doors for our students. So that's Louisa Moats. Okay, so we also then have reading recovery, and this is Marie Claire, and she's a developmental psychologist from New Zealand who first sort of put her theories out there in a 1960 dissertation, and her ideas are based off Goodman's theories. Remember Goodman, who I was like rubbing elbows with? Yeah. So basis of her program is that it is definitely a whole language philosophy. She's all about whole language, and she's all about the meaning, structure, visual of the 3 cueing system. So using, again, this you have to get your head around. So the 3 cueing system is using meaning to figure out the word, using sentence structure to figure out the word, and using visual information or pictures to figure out the word. So she would say, for example, what does the word look like? What does it sound right in here? Can you look at the picture and figure out what's going on? So that's the MSV, or the 3 cueing system in there. And she believed that letters were the least reliable to figure out words in order to become better readers, and that they no longer needed to pay attention to the letters in the words. So her goal was to have kids comprehend and enjoy the reading versus going at over and over and over again. Okay. You also, in your reading, had a chance to have a look at Fontes and Pinnell. Now, their philosophy is similar to reading recovery, but it has more of a balanced literacy bent to it. They encourage phonics and phonemic awareness, and they use leveled text to promote reading. So these are the gurus of the leveled texts. They are a big proponent of the cueing system, the MSV. and like teaching kids, okay, this is how you read, this is how you figure out what the words are, is what's the meaning, does it fit in the sentence, and is there any visual cue that you can take? Okay, these resources are in schools. I would be surprised if there are hardly any schools in Medicine Hat that do not have some Fountas and Pinnell materials. They are huge. It's huge, their impact. And I did one of these quick searches again, 346,000 results just for Fountas and Pinnell Elementary Reading Program. So again, it is a massive series. And this series gives you everything that you would ever need. It gives you all your resources. It gives you the actual script to say to the students. It gives you all the assessment tools, which sounds really great, but you lose a little bit of your autonomy if you totally follow their program. Okay, so that's Fountas and Pinnell. Units of Study and Reading. This is Lucy Calkins, and again, she's very much a balanced literacy person. She uses the 3Q system, the MSV. There, I gotta stop. Although systematic phonics is not a central part of her program, it's quite lean. She's all about just immersion into literature, making reading, she makes reading front and center and something of true value. And so she's a real proponent of Reader's Workshop, where you do a little mini lesson and then you do small group work. So this is sort of immersion into literature. The kids will learn how to read by just being immersed in literature. So definitely a balanced literacy philosophy. So again, it's important that you know these philosophies behind these reading programs, because everything is based on the philosophy. So if it's a balanced literacy philosophy, they're going to teach reading in a particular way. If it's a very phonics based, they're going to teach reading in a very particular way. Okay, so let's bring our cognitive scientists back in. So now let's look at the main battle arguments that cognitive scientists have been putting forth for decades. It's been decades of them putting forth ideas that how we're actually teaching kids in whole language or balanced literacy is actually not the way that we should be doing this. And it's actually detrimental to them learning how to read. Okay, so let's have a look. Why is focusing on teaching reading with 3 cueing system detrimental? So having kids focus on the meaning, on the sentence structure, and looking for clues for what the word is, instead of actually decoding with phonemes, with phonemic awareness, and with phonics. Okay, so here's a quote. Several of these interventions and curricula operate, so balanced literacy, under the understanding that students use multiple sources of information or cues to solve words. Those can include the letters on the page, the context in which the word appears, pictures, or the grammatical structure of the sentence. But neuroscience studies also suggest that skilled readers don't actually read that way. Skilled readers process all the letters in the words when they read them, and that they read connected text very carefully and very quickly. They do not try to memorize words. They do not skip words or use the context to guess the words. They decode the words. Skilled readers use orthographic mapping, or they pay attention to the details of a written word. So with practice, it gets mapped in their head that P-O-N-Y is pony. And weak word recognition skills is the most debilitating source of a reading program. Okay. Observational studies that cognitive scientists have made is that poor readers actually do use different sources of information to predict what the words might say. Like, what are the words around it? What do the pictures say? So all the things that we're actually using to teach good reading strategies, cognitive scientists are saying those are actually really detrimental, and they're actually the skills that poor readers implement all the time. Okay. And students who are poor readers will opt to try to find other ways to figure out words because they find phonics challenging, or they haven't had it explained to them properly, so they're super confused, and so they will start to try to find these alternate ways of figuring out what are these words in front of me, kind of thing in there. Cueing system sometimes seems easier in K1 and 2, but what happens when they get to grade 3? Where there are no more pictures, The text gets heavier, the text gets longer. They start to read to learn instead of learn to read, kind of thing. And it sends a message to the children that they actually don't have to sound out the words. That's hard, and they don't have to do that, which then totally trips them up later, according to cognitive scientists and decades of research. Okay, so here's a little story about Molly. So I said, think of Molly and Margaret. I'm going to read you stories from Molly and Margaret's lives. Molly Woodworth was a kid who seemed to do well at everything, good grades in the gifted and talented program, but she couldn't read very well. There was no rhyme or reason to reading for me, she said, when a teacher would dictate a word and say, tell me how you think you can spell it. I sat there with my mouth open while other kids gave spellings, and I thought, how do they even know where to begin? I was totally lost. Wordsworth went to public school in Owassa, Michigan in the 1990s. She says sounds and letters just didn't make sense to her, and she doesn't remember anyone teaching her how to decipher the sounds and the letters. So she came up with her own strategies to get through text. Strategy 1, think about the 3 cueing system. Strategy 1 was memorize as many words as possible. Words were like pictures to me. She said, I had a really good memory. Strategy 2, guess the words based on the context. If she came across a word she didn't have in her visual memory bank, she'd look at the first word and come up with a word that seemed to make sense. Reading was a kind of game of 20 questions. What would the word be? And strategy 3, if all else failed, she'd skip the words she didn't know. Ooh, what does that sound like? 3 cueing system. But I digress. Most of the time, she could get the gist of what she was reading, but getting through text took forever. I hated reading because it was taxing, she said. I'd get through a chapter and my brain hurt by the end of it. I wasn't excited to learn. No one knew how much she struggled, not even her parents. Her reading strategies were her dirty little secrets. Remember 371? All those people that hid that they couldn't read? Anyways, Woodworth, Molly, who now works in accounting, says she's still not a very good reader and tears up when she talks about it. Reading influences every aspect of your life, she said. She's determined to make sure her own kids get off to a better start than she did. That's why she was so alarmed to see how her oldest child, Claire, was being taught to read in school. A couple of years ago, Woodworth was volunteering in Claire's kindergarten class. The class was reading a book together, and the teacher was telling the children to practice the strategies that good readers use. The teacher said, if you don't know the word, just look at the picture up here. Woodworth recalled, there was a fox and a bear in the picture, and the word was bear, and she said, look at the first letter. It's a B. Is it a fox or a bear? Woodworth was stunned. I thought, oh my goodness, those are my strategies. Those are the things I taught myself to look like a good reader, not the things that good readers do, she said. These kids are being taught my dirty little secrets. She went to the teacher and expressed her concerns. The teacher told her she was teaching reading the way the curriculum told her to. And Margaret Goldwood, a teacher and literacy coach in the Oakland Unified School District, remembers a moment when she realized what a problem the 3 cueing approach was. She was with a first grader named Rodney when he came to a page with a picture of a girl licking an ice cream cone and a dog eating a bone, which is right here in the middle of your page. The text said, my little dog likes to eat with me. But Rodney said, my dog likes to eat the bone. Rodney breezed right through it, unaware that he hadn't read the sentence on the page. Goldberg realized lots of her students couldn't actually read the words in their books. Instead, they were memorizing sentence patterns and using the pictures to guess. One little boy exclaimed, I can read this book with my eyes shut. Oh no, Goldberg thought, that is not reading. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. So, phonics instruction, actually, according to cognitive scientists, a multitude of studies has shown that systematic explicit phonics is the most effective method for teaching early readers. So that's basically, in a nutshell, in the 3 cueing system, introducing this method is actually detrimental to a child's learning to read. So if you were looking at some of those balanced literacy programs, They'll tell you that the approach is a mix of phonics instruction with plenty of time for kids to read and enjoy books. But when you actually look at what it is, it's not really balanced. It's really a bunch of different ideas about how kids learn to read. So it's a little bit of word instruction with long lists of words for kids to memorize. It's a little bit of phonics. And fundamentally, it's the idea that children should be taught to read using the 3 cueing system. So you will focus on, here's a book, try to figure it out using the meaning, the context, and the visual cues, the pictures. And it actually turns out then that when they start to try to decode words in that way, it actually takes away their focus from the words, which is what cognitive scientists have found, that that's actually how you become a skilled reader, is because you actually look at the letters. Okay, so some good stats over here. 75% of teachers in the USA, according to a 2019 Education Week article. I read quite a few of these articles and pulled out some of these for you. So 75% of teachers are using the 3 cueing system in the States. 65% of the teachers said that their district selected their primary reading programs, so they were handed to them, and 27% said that this decision was up to their school. Okay. These are issues. These are issues because, and I get it, teachers are busy. Here's the program. The program's got all sorts of good stuff. You just sort of fly at it. But you need to analyze the program and know what its philosophical basis is, because we cannot ignore some of our cognitive science results that are saying that we actually are not teaching kids in the proper way, but that we are doing this balanced literacy, which is kind of, we're finding that it's actually not really supported by how we know kids read. Okay, so what are the systems that most teachers are using out in the public schools? Okay, we have Units of Reading by Lucy Calkins, which is balanced literacy. We have Reading Recovery Program, which is whole language. And we have Fontes and Pinnell, which is, again, very much balanced literacy. These programs, and this is not conspiracy theory, this is not like, whoa, but they are all published by Heinemann. Heinemann is a massive company. And they make money off of these programs. And so it is in their best interest to keep these programs alive and well in schools. So again, look at the hits. Look at the hits for 467 million for reading recovery. Again, 346,000, 661,000 in there. So just to give you an example of Heinemann as a company, in Oakland School District alone, they bought $500 million worth of Fontes and Pinnell and Lucy Calkins materials. So those materials are going out. They're going out to districts. They're being bought by districts, and they're going into the hands of teachers. And the teachers are saying, "Okay, there's lots of resources here. This is what I guess the district has decided for us." And I don't know if those districts have really analyzed these programs. These are not evil women. They are not out to get anybody. They have put forth what they believe is the best way. But I think now we are seeing that there's different research out there. And I think, again, we have to look at these in what's their philosophical basis, and what is our philosophical basis as a teacher, and then who are our students and what can we best take out of these. Okay, so when these Education Week was particularly asking about these programs, they contacted Heinemann, and Heinemann, they wanted to know what their research was behind their programs. And Heinemann wrote back and said that the company's, every product the company sells is informed by extensive research. However, when you look at the Fontes and Pinnell major research behind their program, it was from the Center of Research in Educational Policy in the University of Memphis, and both of the major research articles were funded by Heinemann. funny how that goes. Reading recovery actually has a much stronger evidence base, but again, there's some controversy about their research methodologies, and that actually some low level or low achieving population was actually not included in their research, so that it would have a bigger degree of improvement in there. Okay, so this is yours to decide. This is yours to decide in a couple of years. Okay, which is kind of exciting and kind of scary. Basically, to be fair to these programs, there is no perfect box set. There is no box set that you buy and that's perfect for everything that you do. Really, it's the middle thing, the middle quote there. You are the most important part of a child learning to read. So you need to be smart researchers. You need to challenge new programs. You need to know your philosophical basis, and you need to continue to do training, right? I would like to think that I can give you everything that you need to know about teaching reading, but I know that that is totally unrealistic. You need to continue training throughout your entire career. You need to be taking really high quality PD, and you need to be doing reading on your own about what is coming out there. Maybe in 20 years, we will have different research, and then we'll have different ways of thinking about how to teach reading. But right now, I think the cognitive scientists have a pretty compelling argument, and that we really need to think about what we are teaching and not just blindly accept what we are supposed to be teaching. Whew. It's getting... I think it went up a few degrees in my little office here. Okay, for Collaborate time, I want you to have looked at all the readings. I want you to synthesize this lecture. I want you to do maybe even a little bit of research on your own. That's not necessary, but I want you to take a stand on a philosophical stance, because this is what you will do in a couple of years. You need to dig in, and if you change in 6 months, in 2 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, that is cool. But you have to figure out where you stand and what you believe is the best way to teach kids how to read, because that is one of the most important gifts that you will give your students. All right. Adios, everybody. We'll see you soon.